Welcome to Lambeg's Rattle in Northern Ireland, Tradition, Socio-Political Unrest, and Brexit. I'm Colin Harte, who will be giving this talk today, and if you have any questions, feel free to email me. An article based on some of this research will be coming out in the Journal of American Musical Instrument Society. Thank you. Now, from its speculative origins as a military drum for King William of Orange's military conquest of Ireland, to its development as a symbol of Protestant Unionist Northern Ireland, the Lambeg drum is an instrument that has a long, contentious socio-political history. The Lambeg is one of the loudest instruments on the planet, and is used during the 12th of July parades by members of the Orange Order that celebrate British Protestant military victories over Irish Catholic resistant forces. The sound has been described by players as akin to the ringing of church bells, while critics argue that the drum's loud sound is intended to terrify Irish Catholics. Lambeg makers and players champion the drum in Portadown, County Armagh, in Northern Ireland, known as the Orange Citadel. The tradition of Lambeg making, competitions, parading, and instructional courses thrive in Portadown. Despite rising political fears and tensions regarding the fallout of Brexit in Northern Ireland, the Lambeg tradition has been maintained by loyal practitioners and enthusiasts. This paper explores the complex, intertwined nature of politics in Northern Ireland during the time of Brexit in relation to the Lambeg drum tradition in Portadown. In particular, the multi-generational participation in Lambeg drum making and playing by the Hobson family serves as the central case study for this research. And this shows you a Orange Order march here with the Lambegs prominently in the front on the picture on the right. And on the left is another picture of a painted Lambeg drum, as you can see there. Originating in the 17th century, the Lambeg drum is found primarily in Northern Ireland and is often associated with Unionist and Orange Order marches, most notably the 12th of July Orange parades. It is typically harnessed on the neck while marching and measures 3 feet in diameter, 2 feet in shell width, and weighs somewhere between 30 to 44 pounds. The goatskin drum heads are tightened by ropes and can produce in excess of 120 decibels, which is equivalent to the sonic volume created by a small engine aircraft. It has been suggested that the precursor to the Lambeg drum arrived in Northern Ireland with William of Orange as part of his Dutch military. These drums were supposedly first played at the Battle of the Boyne in 1690. This battle was between the forces of the deposed King James II of England and Ireland and the 7th of Scotland, and those of King William III, who, along with his wife Queen Mary II, had acceded to the crowns of England and Scotland in 1689. The battle occurred across the River Boyne, close to the nearby town of Drogheda in the Kingdom of Ireland, or modern-day Republic of Ireland, and resulted in a victory for William of Orange. It has been speculated that the Lambeg drums were first played in 1795 at the Battle of the Diamond as well. It's notable that Lambeg practitioners and enthusiasts often tie the origins of the drum to decisive Protestant military victories. Contrary to Orange historical accounts, the Lambeg drum has developed over time, and thus the first recognizable Lambeg drum has been attributed to the grandfather of Belfast Lambeg drum maker William Hewitt in 1871. This drum is preserved by the Mora Orange Order Lodge No. 39 in Lambeg, County Antrim. The Lambeg drums have undergone different alterations during its organological history. Assorted animal skins have been used on the heads, ranging from sheepskin to donkey skin to the preferred goat skin. Brass was occasionally used for the shell, and early beaters were rounded wooden drumsticks. In the 1920s, the Lambegs began to be played with thin, curved, hard cane, usually bamboo or malacca drumsticks, which produced a considerably greater volume. As volume became more valued than tone, drums were tuned with increased tightening and played with louder, harder cane sticks. The harder drumsticks allowed players to bounce off the drum skin quicker, leading to accelerated drum rhythms. The modern-day standard drum measurements and materials have resulted after years of experimentation. The Orange Order itself was formed in County Armagh after the Battle of the Diamond, on September 21st, 1795. This fraternal organization drew upon secret rituals and passwords, heavily borrowing from Freemasonry. From its inception, the order had strong Protestant connotations, whose members consisted of Ulster peasants, landowners, and Anglo-aristocracy who favored a strong allegiance with the British Crown. Historically, most Orange Order lodges would have been having a corresponding group of Lambeg drummers and fife players for marches. The first Orange Order lodge itself was formed on August 21st, 1796 in Portadown, County Armagh, Northern Ireland. The Portadown Orange District itself is comprised of 27 private lodges. Now, Orange parades are ostensibly commemorative in nature. Various Orange historical events are commemorated by parades with themes that range from the fallen British soldiers at the World War I Battle of the Somme to the 12th of July celebrating the Protestant victory at the Battle of the Boyne. The music accompanying Orange parades varies and includes flute, brass, accordion, and pipe bands. Amongst these musical ensembles, musical repertoire is eclectic, where Orange political tunes such as Dolly's Bray, The Sash My Father Wore, and Derry Walls comprise only a portion of the music performed. In particular, the booming sounds of the Lambeg drum have become synonymous with these marches. Historically, the prime use of the Lambeg drum was to accompany the fife played on the 12th of July processions. They were prominently featured beginning from the formation of the Orange Order in 1795 up until the repeal of the Party Processions Act in 1871, where flute and brass bands are mentioned as being part of annual July processions. Afterwards, fife and Lambeg numbers began to decline. During the procession, fifers often played selections from the repertoire that one might associate with Irish traditional music. Favorite tunes included The Blackthorn Stick, Turkey in the Straw, The Queen's Wedding, Pigeon on the Gate, The Flowers of Edinburgh, The Little Beggar Man, amongst others. Reels and hornpipes in 4/4 meter and jigs in 6/8 meter were the most common tunes performed, where Lambeg drummers would accompany fifers by drumming the rhythms of the tunes. Lambegs became banned in Belfast during processions, eventually because they were seen as slowing the pace of military march tempo. By 1887, the British Army began shifting their musical repertoire away from the fife and towards the modern B-flat flute. This musical shift impacted the Orange Order music processional practices, leading to the perspectives of the Lambeg and fife as rural and antiquated. Fifing with Lambeg drum accompaniment has died out in most of Northern Ireland, except for several county Orange districts around Ballymena and County Antrim. Lambeg drummers still play rhythmic compositions based on tunes traditionally played by the fifes. Currently, Lambeg drummers typically perform without fifes and have slightly increased the tempos to which they process. Lambeg drumming is still an integral part of Orange Order ritual and processions. We can see some photos here. This is from Portadown, and you can see the pageantry and the regalia, the orange sass, and of course the painted Lambeg drums. You can see the British flags there as well, and the different districts representing the Orange Order lodges. You can see here a painted drum shell as well. Yes, so there we can see some of at least the imagery that goes onto the shells of these drums as well, and often, as I said, there's the military victories are a big part of that which is depicted. Now, in regards to these parades, in Northern Ireland itself, communal histories are noticeably displayed and commemorated through parades. These parades and the associated parading bands cover the cities, towns, and rural villages through their loud musical performances, often performing in honor of both recent and, like I said, century-old historical events. For Orange Order parades, the music performed prominently features the Lambeg drum, and serves to reinforce community boundaries, acting as the expressive social adhesive that unites strangers and colleagues in an act of ritualized commemoration of a common past. However, within Northern Ireland, there are differing versions of local histories, and parading is a primary tool for delineating these differences. Thus, parading can simultaneously strengthen certain community bonds while provoking and challenging other groups who have different socio-political perspectives of local history. Due to the drum's military history, use in Orange Order marches, and loud volume, some of the Northern Ireland Catholics have associated this drum with Samic intimidation, provocation, and the temporary domination of space through drumming, and more generally with sectarian conflict in Northern Ireland. With a population of nearly 2 million in Northern Ireland, the 6-county region has over 4,000 parades annually. Based on the Parade's Commission report, the governing body charged with setting parade restrictions, 4,182 parade requests were received. 213 requests were analyzed, resulting in restrictions placed upon 147 of those requests. Of the 4,182 requests that were received by the Parade's Commission, over 60% were determined to be associated with Protestant Unionist organizations, such as the Orange Order, the Apprentice Boys of Derry, and the Royal Black Institution, all who parade yearly for the promotion of the Protestant faith, the British Protestant community identity, and its cultural heritage. And when we get to Lambeg drum making, the tradition of drum making involves trade secrets amongst makers pertaining to the procurement and treatment of drum skins. Goat skins themselves are favored and typically imported. Female goats are preferred for their thinner, suppler skin, and the skin needs to be of a fine texture, measuring around 1/1000th of an inch. Skins are typically soaked in a chemical wash for a period of time ranging from 2 days to a week, depending on climate and temperature. The hair is then removed from the goat skin, the chemical treatment is washed away, and the skin fat is removed with a wire brush, left to dry for a week. The skins themselves are shaped paper thin, and then doped with a second chemical treatment which hardens the skin and increases elasticity. The doping of the skin changes amongst makers and is the valued trade secret of accomplished Lambeg makers. Now, Robert Hobson, a Lambeg drum maker and Orange Order member from Portadown, County Armagh, and here he is marching in the 80s in the Orange Order parade, wearing the orange sash, and you can see a Lambeg drum in the distance, specialized in producing superior drum skins, making and fitting drum heads, and repairing and maintaining drum shells. His son, Robert Hobson Jr., continues that family tradition of producing Lambeg drum skins and repairing shells. He recounted that, quote, "My father had drums and decided to go into manufacturing his own skins. He learned from a man named John Mackey, who came from Ballymena, Antrim. He was a fair age of a man when my father started off, and he gave my father the background on how to do a pair of heads and what to put on the inside of the heads to make them drum. It's the sort of thing where he started off there and progressed on his own." And so here's another photo of Hobson and his brother making drum skins and attaching them to a hoop here to eventually fasten to a Lambeg drum. And then here we can see in the middle standing is Robert Hobson, and next to his brother with a Lambeg drum. And of course that's his son there on the left in the sweater, Robert Hobson Jr., who would eventually take over making the skins himself. And here we have Robert Hobson Jr. continuing the family trade, and you can see he has a implement there to sort of shave the skins down to very thin, sort of paper thin quality. And there's the Hobson stamp as well. And there we have Robert Hobson Sr. painted on the drum. We have Robert Hobson Jr. on the right, and we have his nephew, a man named Andy Young, who paints these Lambeg shells, is a drummer and an educator in his own right. And so this is Andy Young on the left. And so in a conversation with Young, he explained the following. "My grandfather and great-grandfather started to make the heads for the drums. So they did. They used to get their heads off the drum makers, and they must have died in the 1920s or 30s or 40s. Through the time, they met other people and decided to give it a go themselves and make their own heads. I think it was around 1962 that they started to make the heads. The goats they used were from Northern Ireland. I suppose it's trial and error. They tried out different things and spoke to different people. And through a period of time, they may have found the best recipe. And that's what they used. I think it was more so my grandfather, Robert Hobson, who died in 1986. This 1970s and 80s, up until he died, he would have been known as one of the best head makers in the country, so he would, along with the likes of David Wilkinson from Port Glenone in County Antrim and Frank Orr in Lambeg, County Antrim, who is still alive. They would have been the main head makers in the 70s and 80s. It would have been passed down through the families. My uncle, Robert Hobson Jr., makes the heads now. Obviously, he's my grandfather's son who does the heads at the minute. It's often espoused by Lambeg makers and players that Lambeg playing is an innate talent. Hobson Jr. said, quote, "You can either drum or you can't, and I can't." Andy Young, on the left here, a competitive Lambeg drummer in his own right, explained his own process for learning the drum. Quote, "Whenever I was young, I would go down to my granny's house after church, and I would get my dinner there. Whenever I was there around the table, my grandfather would have started drumming on the table with a knife and fork. I would have been drumming away along with him. It was just wee things like that. I had a wee small drum, and I just sort of picked it up, in that sort of way. Some people say that it's natural or not. Some people say you can't be learned to drum, but actually at the minute, we're within our own drumming association, we're running classes. We have 19 kids of age, over the age of 13, who are learning to drum at the minute. And many of these students themselves, in addition to performing the parades, look to competition drumming as a place where they can improve their own drumming and also display their skill sets. Young currently teaches these youth Lambeg drum classes in Portadown. The classes themselves are free in order to encourage youth involvement. Young intentionally avoided applying for Ulster government funding in order to avoid governmental intrusion upon the Lambeg curriculum and the broader historical narrative concerning the Lambeg. Young teaches along with 4 other teachers who volunteer primarily preparing students to drum in these parades, as well as drum competitions organized by the different drumming associations, such as the Ulster Drumming Association, the Down Drumming Association, the Armagh Drumming Association, the Mid-Ulster Drumming Association, amongst others. Aside from orange parades, these drumming competitions serve as one of the essential opportunities to demonstrate their Lambeg mastery, as well as learn from senior drummers. Competitions are typically organized by the different aforementioned associations and are held at associated orange halls. Local drumming competitions are typically held every Saturday night from March to October, with drum matches between approximately 10 to 12 drummers. Larger drum competitions include the Claddagh Day Lambeg competitions in Market Hill in County Armagh on the last Saturday of July, where drummers from all of the associations compete with one another. At the Market Hill competition, 3 judges evaluate each drummer. The winner is awarded a trophy, a financial prize, and bragging rights for the year. Drumming competitions grew during the second half of the 19th century as a means of both demonstrating the strength and mastery of the drummer, as exhibited through his Lambeg's tone, volume, and execution of traditional tune rhythms. 2 drummers would compete against one another in order to test each other's endurance, volume, and ability to produce traditional rhythm compositions. The drummer who stopped drumming first lost the match. Over the years, however, the focus of competitions has gradually shifted towards the musical mastery of the drummer and tone quality of the drum, as opposed to endurance and volume that was evaluated in the past. And we can see the trophy there held by Andrew Young from one of these competitions. In light of the ongoing political machinations and socio-political tensions associated with Brexit, the Lambeg tradition maintains a tenuous position in Northern Ireland. In the 90s, the Orange Order initiated a propaganda campaign advocating for the right to march in contested areas as part of their cultural heritage. The Lambeg drumming tradition has been included in this cultural heritage narrative, where the Lambeg drumming is a musical component of a larger Ulster Protestant identity. The Orange Order has de-emphasized the drum's stigma as a loud, intimidating musical force used to sonically dominate contested spaces. Instead, the drumming tradition has been championed and continued through weekly drumming competitions. While still a major component of Orange marches, practitioners looking to recruit younger members emphasize the local competitions, cultural heritage, and musicality of the Lambeg. Young explains, "I don't really know how a Roman Catholic would view the drum. They might say, oh, that's a drum that is only for Protestants, and that's it. But all my life, whenever I've been at drums, they've only been used on the 12th of July parades, obviously, so it is. The same with drumming competitions. It's never ever mentioned that it's here to put fear into Catholics, if you want to use that sort of word or whatever you'd say about it. The only reason that people who go to the competitions and drum, the reason they go is because of the sound. They like the sound of it. They like the skill playing it, and it's never mentioned as anything other than that. To cause offense to a different religion, I can understand the Catholic way. It's like everything else. There's good and bad everywhere, so there is. But it's never mentioned, so it's not. That we're going to promote this to stamp our authority of religion, so it's not. Definitely not." Young further explained that in some areas it's actually going in reverse, where a lot of Orange halls are now in areas that have been built up with a lot of houses around them, and so that the residents themselves are not pleased with the loud sounds going on well into the night. The drum competitions typically start about 8:30 at night and go until about 10:30 at night. So if these houses have young kids, they might not want to hear the loud drumming. As Brexit has renewed attention to old sectarian conflicts, it has sparked fear in certain Northern Ireland communities, and the future of the Lambeg tradition in Ireland is subject to speculation. As different stakeholders in Northern Ireland negotiate a means to avoid a return to violent sectarian conflicts, the musical role of the Lambeg must be redefined from a militarized musical weapon used to reinforce sectarian conflict to a transformed musical instrument that is performed primarily in drumming competitions. Robert Hobson Jr. explained that, quote, "The Lambeg drums years ago, the only place you would have had a Lambeg drum was coming out of Belfast with the likes of William Hewitt. And now there's head makers all around Northern Ireland, so there is. Generally, there used to be only one association, but now there's 4 or 5 in the Lambeg community. And Andy is starting the young boys to learn the art of drumming. In the old days, it was only the older boys that played the drums, none of the young boys. But nowadays, this has changed, and we want the youth to get at it right away." You'd see the drums out on the 12th of July with different Orange lodges, but apart from different drumming matches on a Saturday night, that's all there is. The Protestants are the ones who work at the drumming of the Lambeg. No Catholics have anything to do with it as such, but certainly with the Orange Order and the drumming associations. That's the main thing with the drums at the minute. I could see in the future that's the way it would be as well. Thank you for listening to this talk, and if you have any questions, feel free to email me there. This is an ongoing research project, obviously, and there'll be an article coming out in JAMIS as well about it, but I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.